In the first read series, a series where I read a poem by a poet I don't know or know very little, and I just do it for the first time for the sheer joy of reading poetry. I don't try to read it to teach it or anything like that, and I might come back and read it totally differently the next time around. So it's just a sheer joy of reading, the reason I read poetry in the first place. I got started reading it. This is from Concision Poetry Journal, a nice little journal. The poet is Danika Stegeman LeMay's. Now, I haven't read this, but I see like a picture of a car here and a person standing kind of like holding the car. A lot of grass around on a grassy surface, a little chair in the background, a little house that looks like an older picture, an older car. I'm assuming we're going to go with that. There's some stuff around it. Guitarist, his right, have loved. So I'm assuming this is all going with this poem since it's here. I always look at a form when I look at a poem for the first time. And I see the threes, the triplets here, and I always think, initially, if it's a traditional form, I often think terza rima or villanelle or something. This one doesn't go 3-3-3-3-3-4, so I know it's not a villanelle. It seems to mirror kind of terza rima, but there's no rhyme scheme. So maybe it's not a traditional form. Mother is a nebula. My mother's eyes are closed. She's like she's already a ghost. An exoskeleton twines her. She collapses. Time I never called her my mother. So it's not quite the same number of syllables, though it's close. It seems like 14 syllables a line. Just reading the first lines, my mother is a nebula, my mother's eyes are closed. It's primarily iambic. I don't know if this is on purpose or this is just because that tends to be the most common meter in English, one way or the other. It looks like an open form that's just using a reference to the triplets. So I'm not going to focus too much on the poem itself. My mother is a nebula, her eyes are closed like she's already a ghost. I'm going to go back and look at this picture. Yeah, it seems like it's referencing this picture. An exoskeleton twins her. She collapses. Time I never called her my mother. Well, this apparently feels like it's written after the mother has died. The eyes are closed, like she's already a ghost. Just kind of suggests she is a ghost now. So a poem about the mother in this picture, but the mother is a nebula, is like our focus of everything. It feels like this poem is going to play with that idea of looking at the image, but also bringing in all this other stuff. Like I never called her my mother. My mother isn't inside the car, but neither is she outside the car. Yeah, that was in the picture. Dust disperses. Her hand clutches the door. Her hand clutches the door with devotion. So we can see this in the image. So a description of this, right, of this thing with devotion and necessity. I'm not sure why the door is clutched with devotion and necessity. That seems like it requires something outside of the poem to completely understand. Her love has painted the body in two-toned blue. I love it because the body, you think of the body of the car, but somehow, you think of a person painting themselves with clothes or something. That's not happening here, but it's a play on this. You can't see it, but the car's backseat is raw, unupholstered metal. Memory is a host. My dead live here in a quarter of rust thatched together in a ramshackle structure. So like I said, this does feel like it's coming out of somewhere because you can't see the back seat, which is okay. In the two-tone, I'm guessing it's playing off this bottom part and the top part, but I'm not sure. I can't really see it that well. Not off the person. The memory is a host. This feels like the nebula thing. The mother, the idea of the mother comes with so many memories in itself that circle around. My dead live here in a quarter of rust thatched together in a ramshackle structure, which plays off the structures in this picture. Where the dead live, like how you imagine them, how you see them, but also what's in your memory. The grass is overgrown. When my mother is pregnant, her voice refracts against porcelain as she spills outward. I think this kind of idea is in the poem. This is like a bit of grief pulling up the memories here, and they spill out like the mother's voice spills out. But also like Memories spill out when you think of somebody that's really important to you that's passed. Other times come in. Things come out that you want to tell a story of. Her scales feather the drain, seeds spread. The home we left is a field, which seems to play with this idea of field 2 at the beginning, or this itself is the field in this image, maybe, this ramshackle structure. I watched the field dismantle the shack. The shack swallow the rest. It's almost the field. I feel weirdly feels like the field poetics, like the poem is somehow swallowing the shack itself, just by creating this poem itself, the memories. My mother clutches the car door as though it's what keeps her upright, what keeps her from collapsing, what keeps her from vanishing. I love that little play on here, as if she's not really collapsing the door, grasping the door for herself. It's not keeping her from collapsing for her, but for those who look at the picture later on and see it. Remember the quiet evenings. My mother is liminal. My mother is cleft between worlds. She speaks to me. She speaks to me from a mouth filled with clover. And this idea that like the mother is a liminal, this tie between the two worlds, because you've had this person, this cleft that speaks to you as memory, through your grief, through your memories of that person, through your presentation of that person, not necessarily through the present, but it's still there one way or the other. So a nice little poem. It feels like I said, it's like a poem about grief of losing her mother. Danika, Stegeman, LeMay. I haven't read any of her other work. I'm curious to do that after this point.